Hello everyone, this is Captain Brian here. I'm aboard the Southern Drawl, a 46-foot Hatteras with twin 8V71 engines. Today I want to go over the procedure for cleaning the heat exchanger and the cooling system in place without removing it. First, I would like to say that cleaning a heat exchanger in place is not the recommended procedure. That you should pull these heat exchangers out from time to time and have them pressure tested and cleaned in a radiator shop by a professional. This is more of a method to help get a little time in between those, and if you're in Florida like me where the water's warm and a lot of marine growth and scale, you could be doing this every 6 months if you had to pull them out. So these were pulled out 2 years ago and pressure tested, and actually my intercoolers were I removed them in about a month ago and pressure tested them and cleaned them. So since my intercoolers are clean, I'm going to do my heat exchangers with the acid wash. We use phosphoric acid for that, and I'll show you more about that later. And from the water pump, it is pumped up through the intercoolers here on top. As you can see, I've serviced them recently, pulled them apart, took them off the boat, pressure tested, but the water flows through the intercoolers. There's a pair of them there bolted together, and that cools the air from these turbos that blow the air through them. And from the intercooler, it runs down. It's kind of hard to see here, but it runs down and into this fuel cooler. So I've got a fuel cooler here that the water runs through. It's a tube. They don't typically get a lot of scale, and the fuel runs through the shell there and it cools the fuel. And then it runs over here into the heat exchanger, which is what we're focused on today. So there's coolant on one side of the circuit, that's up here. The coolant circulates through the engine block, and it's cooled by the heat exchanger here, where the seawater comes through this heat exchanger inside of here. So the water flows through here, and then it flows around, and it's kind of tight back in here, but just so you get an idea, it flows out that way and down to the exhaust. So these little plugs here, those are anodes. So I've pulled these two anodes off the out of the heat exchanger, and you want to make sure you get all the anodes out of your cooling circuit. Today I'm only going to flush the heat exchanger. I'm not going to circulate through the intercoolers because, as I said, I just recently serviced them. They don't even have an hour on them. But if you have any anodes anywhere else in your system, then you want to remove them if they're going to get circulated. So these anodes screw on to the bolt here, and we've got to have that head so it'll seal up. So what this does, I'll try to do it here filming. It's a little tight, so I'm going to have to get some pliers and gently grab the anode and unscrew it from the threaded plug there. So I've got the anodes out of the threaded plug. These, if you'll see, I've got the date on there that I serviced them, 6 of 26, so they're only been in there about a month, so I'm reusing them. A little trick I learned is if you take those pliers and tighten it slightly before you try to loosen it, because they're very soft and it's very easy to break off the threads in there, and then you have to heat it up or put it in acid and dissolve the threads out so you can screw another one in. So if you'll tighten it slightly, if it's still in good shape, I think the rule of thumb is 50% or more missing, is you need to replace it. But I always typically replace them anytime I do this type of work. So they're not very expensive. They're $5 or $6 a piece. I've got my borescope here, and I just simply run it into the hole where the anode is. These things are very inexpensive on Amazon now, and provides a glimpse into what's inside. If you'll notice here, I just saw there's an old anode that when I changed them, I dropped it in here, and I'm unable to retrieve that, but it should melt it with this acid that I'm doing. And I also noticed there's like some scale, if you'll notice that salt buildup or marine growth there in between those plates, and that's where the water runs through. So that kind of stuff will restrict water flow and cooling capacity. You can see a little slime on it. I did the other side, see a little green there. You can kind of get a feel just on the outside, but this doesn't give you as good of a view as pulling them out. But that's they're not terribly bad, but here in Florida, this water's 90 degrees this time of year. You need full efficiency. And also these Detroits are just kind of on the edge on their capacity. So there's that side. I'll look at the other side. If I see anything much different, I'll get back to you. Okay, so I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. This is where the water discharges from the into the exhaust. There's a T here where the water comes out. For me, it's going to vary depending on your engine, your setup. You just got to find out what plumbing works best for you. Ideally, you want to flush backwards. So I want the water going in through this pipe and running backwards through, and then coming out, discharging here, which is actually where it goes into the water pump. You can see that blue, that's probably a salt lump inside the pipe there. It's also a good time to change clamps and check your clamps. You'll notice I got some rusty ones. Those are going to go. I don't like these band clamps very well. I prefer these constant torque like these. So I'll probably go back with those. But as you can see, like here, at one time I changed one of those and left the old one. I like to double clamp everything. Some of these clamps I've already loosened up, but it's going to depend on what engine you've got, what setup. This procedure works for heat exchangers. My air conditioners over here, I'll do them occasionally to clean out those condenser coils there. So this works in my generator. I did my heat exchanger here. I took it off the generator though to do it, and took it and but I used the same procedure out of the boat to wash it and inspect it and clean it. So I've got 3 fittings here that I'm going to use to make this happen, to circulate this acid solution through the heat exchanger. And I'll get into how to mix that and do all that later, but first we got to get ready. So this cap here is one I made. I go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever, and use what I got in my tool bag and my spare stuff, but I've been using this for a while. But this will go on the end of that T down there to block it off. I find it's easier just to do this than to try to take that big hose off of the other one. And then this elbow here fits pretty nicely into this end of this hose, and I got to clamp it down pretty tight so it doesn't drip. And also I need to put some new thread lock on this one because it was dripping on the other engine when I did it. But that one will go in there, and it's got a hose fitting as well where I can put a water hose back to the bucket. So we'll use a bilge pump and circulate this through, and once I get everything set up here, I'll go over it with you again. Okay, so we're in the salon here, and I'm going to put my acid solution in this bucket. The reason the bucket's up here is you want the bucket higher than your heat exchanger. The one thing that'll keep this from working properly is if you get air in your heat exchanger, I mean, you can have a little air, but the more air you have, the less of your coils get cleaned, because the air gets trapped in there and it doesn't allow the water to touch everything. So what I've got here, I've got a cheap Amazon special bilge pump. Looks like it's 750 gallons per hour, 12 volt. You can use whatever bilge pump that you can plumb up. I've got a little 90 in there. The black hose is the supply that comes off the bilge pump on the discharge side, and the blue hose is the return. So what I've done, I've got the supply going in here to the exhaust pipe, as you can see, the fitting I showed you earlier, and then I've got it capped on the other end down there, so the water's going to go through the exhaust pipe there, through in that T, back through that larger pipe. And so I was going to come over here and do it on the back side of the fuel cooler. As you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff in the way there. I undid a clamp or two I got to put back, but very tight. And I normally do the intercoolers too. So what I did is I came over here, since I'm concentrating just on the heat exchanger, I came over here and did my return off of the pipe that comes out of the heat exchanger. I actually undid the fuel cooler here, which it's got a little bit of stuff inside of it. As you can see, it's not terrible, but I can flush it separately, maybe undo it here. I started to do that, but I may just let it ride because it was clean with the others, and they're slick walled and they're pretty large. And these Detroits, they cool on the return to keep the tank from condensating, is what I've been told. But anyway, that's the setup. Again, you would plumb it to your particular situation, fitting sizes and all that. If I'm doing my air conditioners over here, of course, I would pull them off and go down to something that's 1/2 inch, 3/4, you know, whatever fits the application there to circulate it through those heat exchangers. Okay, so I've got my rig set up, ready to go. What you want to do is you want to get the right mixture of acid and water. It's a 5-to-1 ratio, is pretty close to what the Barnacle Busters is. What I'm using here is this clean strip concrete and metal prep. It's a rust remover surface prep is what it says. It's phosphoric acid. You can get it at Lowe's and Home Depot. The price has creeped up to $20 a gallon, but it's still cheaper than that Barnacle Buster stuff and does the same thing. You don't want to go any more than that 5-to-1. That's 5 parts water to 1 part acid. What you should do on a small heat exchanger like an air conditioner, you can just pre-mix some up, but on a larger engine like this, where you've got larger heat exchangers, more volume, you need to first put water in your bucket like I've done over here and pump it in there, and make sure you've got enough water to where your bilge pump can pick up and return water to the heat exchanger. You don't want it, you want to cover the bilge pump with water if at all possible, so you don't suck air and just cause issues. But I already know on my boat what I need here is 5 gallons of water and 1 gallon of the concrete and metal prep. That makes 6 gallons total. That's a comfortable amount to keep the bilge pump pumping and circulate through the heat exchanger. So I'm going to turn the pump on and circulate the water through the engine to make sure there's no leaks, and do that before I add the acid, because if you add the acid and then check for leaks, then if you have a leak, you know you've lost your acid. So let me do that. So I've added my acid and it's circulating. You'll notice the foam. That's the acid doing its thing, working on the debris and stuff. You want to pump it until that quits for sure. Make sure your discharge hose is down below the surface. If you don't, it makes bubbles too, but you'll notice there it is returning. And then I'm going to show you how to bleed air out of the line here. What you want to do, so I learned the hard way that if you don't bleed air out, if you can see here, this pipe is 1.5 inches in diameter where the solution comes out or in, and we got a 3/4 inch bilge pump, so it's only going to pump to like right here or so before it flows out, but our heat exchanger goes up to here. So in order for us to get that up high as we can, probably to the top of this pipe here, we need to bleed the air out of the heat exchanger. So what I'm going to do, there's a little vent right there. The next time I have that out, I may try to tap something in there, that like a little petcock, but I have trouble. That's kind of brass and it's real soft. So what I've been doing on these is just loosening this screw here. You can see it's going to drip a little, but there's usually some water that comes out, but air, you see all that air coming out? So I'm going to sit there and bleed that air out until I get mostly water, and that's going to let the fluid rise in that tank. And the other thing I'll do, I probably won't video it, but I'll go and I will pinch the return hose and let that bilge pump water in a little higher in there. But I did this on the other side when I did it, and I found that it went almost to the top of the heat exchanger with the cleaning. But when you don't do that, it seems like it only cleans the bottom third or half of the heat exchanger. So you want to be sure you bleed all that air out of your heat exchanger, out of your tank here. Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. I got the air bled off of the heat exchanger. Got water coming out the plug at the top, and so it's doing its thing. You can see the bubbles there. So I'll wait. I usually like to go close to 2 hours, and then check it. I'll come back in about an hour, probably just do something else. And doesn't hurt to stay in here and watch it, but I've got a lot of other things to do. You always want to try to be ready to flush the engines out when you're done. What I'll do, because it takes a while to hook all this up, and I probably don't want to fool with all that this evening, I'll probably take this bucket out and fill one up with fresh water and flush through it, and then tomorrow I'll connect all the hoses and tighten everything up, crank the engines and run it and see. Okay, so we're 3 hours into this, and we're still getting some foaming. Maybe some old anode down there or something, but notice how black it went from green to black, and that means it's working. It's doing its thing. Okay, so after almost 4 hours of flushing, you can see why this is good but bad. If you can notice here, pretty much the coils are clean. That white you see is foam, but see the green up top? This method won't really get the top of the coil. See those top 3 to 4 fins? Even venting it and all that, you still don't get enough solution up there. So this is right, you really need to pull these things every so often and take them to the radiator shop and get them done right. This will buy you some time with that, but it's really not the solution. But you can see down below it now, that's not salt, that's foam that you're seeing. That's the water line. You can see the foam in there. I've flushed this twice with with clear water, but there's still some foam in here from the acid reaction. As you can see, everything's pretty clean where it was able to get. I do have a little bit of that anode down there, and that's why I'm still getting foam. That anode's not completely eaten away. So this is the other side of the coils. See the foam in there? You can see, but they're very clean. But if you notice up here, there's still a lot of green above that level that the solution got. So you're really not, see the green is distinct right there. That's the intake pipe, and you can, if you really look hard right there, yeah, there we go, you can see the green and the slime, the corrosion up above the level that was able to get to in that pipe. So this really does not get the entire coil. And you can see the water in there with some foam, but you can see that's pretty clean. Again, that's the foam, but it's pretty clean. The foam is coming from a piece of an anode that is down on the other side. I think the coils are clean. I don't want to run this too long because I don't want to eat a hole through. This is the other side. The anode's on the inboard side of the engine. So we got the engine back running, got a good water flow over there. We are good to go.